countdown is on. The world is watching with bated breath. What will Donald Trump unleash? The big tariff announcement is coming tonight. There's a lot of speculation and crashing stocks. We will bring you up to speed and look at the implications for India. How hard will be the blow? And can India turn it into an opportunity? Also, what should you do as an investor? Many are flocking to gold, the safe haven investment. In China, Xi Jinping is making moves, political, military and economic, to soften the blow. Meanwhile, Europe is in war mode, not just the tariff war, but the military kind too. Countries are boosting defense spending, reviving bunkers and stockpiling landmines. We'll tell you why. Also in focus, what is Qatar Gate? Why have Netanyahu's aides been arrested? How will Iran respond to an attack? And what role can Russia play? Why is the state visit of Chile's president to India so significant? What is Minecraft? Why is it the most successful video game of all time? And how rich are India's richest temples? All this and more coming up. The headlines first. The Kremlin says President Vladimir Putin has no plans to visit Saudi Arabia, ruling out any meeting with US President Donald Trump there. Since February, Putin and Trump have had 2 known phone calls, but are yet to meet in person. Trump is expected to visit Saudi Arabia next month. Israeli Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir visits the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in Jerusalem, leading to strong condemnation from Saudi Arabia and Jordan. Hamas calls it a dangerous escalation. The Al-Aqsa Mosque compound is sacred to both Jews and Muslims. Non-Muslims can visit the site but are not permitted to pray there. Myanmar's junta announces a temporary ceasefire as the country grapples with the aftermath of a devastating earthquake. Friday's quake has killed nearly 3,000 people. The ceasefire will be in place till the 22nd of April. The junta is engaged in a bitter fight with armed groups opposed to its rule. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to visit Thailand tomorrow. During his 2-day visit, Prime Minister Modi will hold talks with his Thai counterpart and attend the BIMSTEC summit. This would be the first physical meeting of the BIMSTEC leaders since 2018. BIMSTEC comprises 7 South Asian and Southeast Asian nations. And Nigeria's president sacks the entire board of the country's state-run oil company, names a former Shell executive to lead the firm in a sweeping overhaul. The company has been accused of corruption and political interference. It has also faced allegations of mismanaging Nigeria's fossil fuels.
The president's historic action tomorrow will improve American competitiveness in every area of industry.
It's short with all countries, so let's see what happens. With many countries. I haven't heard a rumor about 15 countries, 10 or 15.
April 2nd, 2025, a date the world won't forget. History will remember it in one of 2 ways. The day America reclaimed its economy, or the day it plunged into financial chaos. For Donald Trump, it is Liberation Day. Liberation Day, a bold stand for American independence. For economists, it is a lit match in a gas-filled room. Either way, the world is watching, popcorn in hand, and a stock app in the other. So what exactly is Liberation Day? What does it mean for the global economy and what comes next? Let's look at it one by one. First, what will happen on April 2nd? In just a few hours from now, Donald Trump will announce a series of new tariffs. His premise is simple. America has bought cheap foreign goods for years. Americans have been ripped off, and President Trump wants to end that because his motto is to make America great again. He wants to bring back manufacturing to the US, which is why he's imposing tariffs. The details of which still remain a secret, by the way. But Trump has teased them like the season finale of a reality TV show, the Liberation Day address.
2nd, 2025 will go down as one of the most important days in modern American history. Our country has been one of the most open economies in the world, and we have the consumer base hands down, the best consumer base. But too many foreign countries have their markets closed to our exports. This is fundamentally unfair.
So which countries will be affected? The US has the largest trade deficit in the world. In 2023, it stood at $1.1 trillion, meaning the US imported $1.1 trillion worth of goods more than it exported, 1.1 trillion. In 2024, Washington had a trade deficit with 92 countries. So according to Trump, the whole world will be affected by his tariffs. They will apply to all countries.
Start with all countries, so let's see what happens. There are many countries. I haven't heard a rumor about 15 countries, 10 or 15.
So you're starting with all countries?
Essentially, all of the countries that we're talking about.
So what kind of tariffs are we looking at? Trump has been threatening this since he took office, and he's followed through on quite a few of them. On the 4th of February, he imposed 10% tariffs on China. On the 4th of March, he imposed 25% import tariffs on Canada and Mexico, and on the 26th of March, he announced 25% auto tariffs. So this one was long coming. But what will it look like? There are many conflicting reports. One says it will be 20% for all imports, a blanket 20% on everything. That's what one report says. Then there are also reports about the dirty 15. That's 15% of the countries that make a bulk of US trade and impose tariffs on American goods. There could be reciprocal tariffs on all these nations. So there is no one plan that the world knows of. Does Donald Trump have a consolidated plan? He was asked about it. All he said was that the US will be kind.
Are going to be very nice by comparison to what they were. The numbers will be lower than what they've been charging us, and in some cases maybe substantially lower, but we sort of have a world obligation perhaps. But we're going to be very nice. Relatively speaking, we're going to be very kind.
If history is any guide, the immediate economic impact will be felt in many ways. First is rising consumer prices. As you know, tariffs are taxes on imports. And who pays them? Not the exporting countries. It is the importers who pay this extra money. Higher the tariffs, higher the prices. That's how it works. And in the end, it is the consumer who pays more. So expect things to get more expensive. Everything from your sneakers to your cars. According to economists, an average US family could spend $3,000 to $4,000 more every single year. The second impact will be retaliation. Canada, the EU and China, they're all already sharpening their counter punches. The last time Trump did this, they went after American goods. And this time, you can expect an all-out economic brawl.
We are going to be very deliberate in terms of the measures we take to fight for Canada, fight against these unjustified measures by the U.S. administration, but also to protect, to have that minimal impact in Canada.
We do not believe in an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, because that always leads to a bad situation. Of course, measures are taken because measures are taken on the other side, but the dialogue must continue.
On our response, all I can say is that there will be one. It will happen at the appropriate moment after the expected announcement later this evening.
The third impact will be on the stock market. Investors hate uncertainty, so markets across the world are rattled. European and Asian markets took a nosedive today. Meanwhile, safe haven gold soared to a record peak. We will tell you about that in just a bit. But none of this is bothering Donald Trump. For him, Liberation Day is more than just an economic policy. It is a campaign event. His voter base loves protectionism. They see it as a way to revive America and sticking it to foreign competitors. So Trump is going with it. But here's why this is a gamble. About half of all US consumer goods come from abroad. If prices rise and inflation spikes, ordinary Americans, including Trump's voters, will feel the pain. There are also fears of a recession. Goldman Sachs has a new assessment. It has lifted the possibility of a US recession to 35%. So this is a tricky one. The tariffs will disrupt a lot. We won't know the full impact for months, maybe even years. But when the dust settles, the question will be this: was this truly liberation? Or was it the beginning of an economic war? It's going to be a long night in New Delhi. Expect our trade officials to pull an extra shift because that's how significant this moment is. Some newspapers are comparing it to 1991 when India turned an economic crisis into an opportunity, when we opened up our economy. The question is, can we do it again? And to answer that, we must look at the impact first. Will Trump's tariffs hurt us? The short answer is yes. Last year, India-US trade stood at $129 billion. And this trade is tagged in India's favor. We export $87 billion worth of goods to America. We import just $42 billion. So India benefits more from this trade. But what happens when the tariffs come in? Indian exports would suffer. You see, tariffs make goods more expensive. More expensive equals less competitive. Less competitive equals less sales, which is why Indian exports would suffer. Now we come to the specific goods and sectors. Trump's tariffs are reciprocal in nature. It's basically a tit-for-tat policy. You impose 5%, I impose 5%. That's reciprocal tariffs in a nutshell. So the impact depends on the tariff differential, the difference between India's tariffs and America's tariffs. Say India charges 10% on US alcohol and the US charges only 3% on Indian alcohol. Then the differential is 7%. So you can expect Trump to hike alcohol tariffs by 7%. Basically, to bring it on par with Indian tariffs. The higher the differential, the bigger the impact. Now, based on this, a few sectors are more vulnerable. For example, electronics. Things like your mobile phones and laptops, they make up $11 billion of India's exports to the US. And the tariff difference? Almost 9%. Now remember, these are not Indian brands making in India. These are mostly foreign tech companies. So if the tariffs rise, they may stop making or assembling in India. Instead, they will look for low tariff nations. Another vulnerable sector is automobiles, both vehicles and vehicle parts. The tariff difference here is almost 23% in the auto sector. So expect a major impact. We don't ship a lot of cars to America, but we do ship a lot of car parts. And those companies are now at major risk. The third vulnerable sector is farm goods. Here, the average tariff difference is almost 32%. In fish and meat, it is almost 28%. And in dairy products, almost 38%. Reciprocal tariffs would hurt all these sectors. The fourth vulnerable industry is pharmaceuticals, your generic drugs, your medicines. India's pharma exports to the US made up $8.7 billion last year. And the tariff difference? Almost 8.6%. Now, it is not as high as dairy or agriculture, but the volume of trade is quite high. And finally, the fifth vulnerable sector, which is gems and jewelry. Indian exports are valued at almost $10 billion. The tariff gap is more than 13%. So once again, it's a major risk. The government of India is clearly worried about all of this. It is pushing for a trade deal with the US. Yesterday, the Indian Prime Minister's office agreed to the terms of reference. Think of it as a framework for trade talks. With that agreed, the real negotiations can now begin. Trump has repeatedly said that India will cut tariffs. Let's see if New Delhi actually commits to it. And that sums up the impact on India's trade and exports, the impact of Trump's tariffs. Now let's go back to the original question. Can we turn this crisis into an opportunity? Well, to some extent, yes, we can. Many experts have complained about India's high tariffs. A lot of Indian sectors don't even need it. In fact, the tariffs shield Indian firms from competition. And no competition equals no growth. So perhaps Trump will jolt Indian policymakers into action. Having said that, there are concerns too. Like in agriculture, almost half of all Indians work in this sector, and yes, our agro output is massive. The output is very big, but productivity is still low. So American produce could displace Indian ones. Plus, agriculture is a politically sensitive issue. If you give tariff concessions, it could easily backfire. And the government will be aware of all of this. It is eager to finalize that trade deal before the end of this year, but a lot still depends on Donald Trump, on why he is waging this tariff war. If this is just about the trade deficit, India has other options. Maybe buy more American weapons or US gas, basically level out that deficit. But if this is genuinely about reciprocity, all bets are off because it runs against established trade rules. That's also why most countries are preparing aggressive responses. At this point, it's a waiting game. Let's see what tonight brings. If you're an investor, these are tough times. You work hard to earn some money and you try to put that money to work. But all of a sudden, everything is uncertain. No one knows what the future holds. It's the worst situation for any investor. So tonight we'll try and help you out. First, let's look at the usual investment avenues. Gold seems to be on a roll. Look at prices here in New Delhi. On the 20th of January this year, gold was selling for 81,000 rupees. That's 81,000 for 10 grams of gold. Do you know what was the price today? More than 93,000 rupees. That's more than 14% returns. Not bad for a so-called safe haven investment. Yesterday, gold prices hit an all-time high and chances are they will keep rising. Some experts are talking about the magic 1 lakh number. 10 grams for 1 lakh rupees. This number could be hit in 2025 in this year, especially if the uncertainty continues. Because like I said, gold is a safe haven investment. People buy gold when other things are volatile. So let's look at those other things. The stock markets are all over the place. Today, the Sensex closed almost 600 points up, but yesterday it closed almost 1,400 points down. And tomorrow, all bets are off. Investors are clearly worried about the tariffs. If the rates are lower than expected, the markets will be fine. They may even gain more points, but if the rates are higher, then we could see another bloodbath. Either way, it's not a good time to make big bets because the tariff impact will go beyond tomorrow. Some countries may announce retaliation, some countries may get relief. So this will be a long and winding process, and chances are the markets will react to each move and statement. Then what options do you have as an investor? What should you do? Some big fund managers have certain hacks, like stay away from the market swings. Instead, focus on individual stocks, on companies that have solid numbers behind them, maybe banks or construction firms. Another tactic is to avoid export-oriented firms. And the logic here is, of course, quite simple. If you don't export a lot, you will not be impacted by the tariffs. So focus on companies that make money in India, maybe airlines or beverage brands. And just to be clear, even these strategies have a certain amount of risk. None of these are sure shot options. They are meant to inform you, to give you an idea of what is possible and what should be avoided. If you like taking risks, there is an opportunity. As they say, buy the dip. The problem here is no one knows where the dip is, whether the markets will keep falling or whether they will rebound now. We don't know. It's a bit like the pandemic. When the markets fell in 2020, there was a lot of panic selling, but many investors stayed on for the ride. Some even doubled down and bought more. And 4 years later, they're reaping the rewards. So don't take any decision in haste. Factor in all your concerns, your appetite for risk, your financial priorities, and your ability to take a hit. And what about unconventional investment avenues, like cryptocurrencies? Well, experts are divided on this one. If you look at Bitcoin, it's been very volatile. We were talking about $100,000 last year. It is now trading at $84,000. If you add the tariff tensions, it's a huge risk. So to sum it up, let me just say this. I know these are uncertain times for any investor, but that's no reason to keep your money under your bed. Yes, some investments are not advisable, but there are solid ways to put your money to work. We just mentioned how gold has done well. So your job is to do the necessary research, to reach out to financial advisors, to understand the risks of each investment, and then finally make an informed choice. And you can catch our full coverage of Trump's Liberation Day announcement in a few hours from now. Watch the US President's speech live on First Post at 1:30 a.m. IST.
President Xi.
So all signs point towards upheaval, more uncertainty, more unpredictability. How is Xi Jinping preparing for this challenge? He leads China, the world's second largest economy, also America's biggest economic and military rival. So Xi Jinping's actions will be closely watched. And he's making moves on all fronts, political, military and trade. Let's start with the politics. President Xi's first priority/challenge is to maintain stability at home. And for an authoritarian leader, that means total control on all levers of power. So President Xi is shaking up the Chinese government. He has swapped the roles of two top leaders. Both are part of the Politburo. The Politburo is China's top decision-making body. It has 24 members. This body has been reshuffled. Two departments have new heads. One is the propaganda department, better known as the United Front Work Department. The second is the appointments department. Heads of these departments have swapped seats. In any other country, this would be a regular bureaucratic move. But in China, this is big news, and I'll tell you why. Because this is a rare step. In fact, unprecedented. This has never happened before. Usually a scandal or a corruption case leads to such changes. But there is no scandal this time, no suggestion that these officials did something wrong. Then why did the president transfer them? Because he just wanted to shake things up. That's what reports say. Xi Jinping does not want senior party members to become influential. He does not want them to build their own power centers. So he's trying to unsettle them. This is classic Xi. This is how he locks down power, by eliminating the possibility of rival power centers. So that's the first front where he's making moves, the political front. The second is the military front. China is flexing its muscle. It is targeting Taiwan again. We told you about this yesterday. The Chinese army, the PLA, or the People's Liberation Army, has launched fresh drills. They've mobilized a large number of military assets, including 76 aircraft and more than 20 Navy and Coast Guard ships. These drills simulate attacks on Taiwan's strategic assets, like ports and power plants.
China's joint military exercises serve as a serious warning and a strong deterrent against separatist forces advocating Taiwan independence. They are legitimate and necessary actions to defend national sovereignty and safeguard national unity.
China is also pushing propaganda. We've shown you this video before. It was released by Beijing. It features Lai Ching-te, the president of Taiwan. China has depicted him as a parasite. Lai is being held by chopsticks over Taiwan, and the island is burning. Basically, the president is being roasted in this fire. That's what the animated video shows. Its purpose is the same as the PLA drills. It is designed to provoke and intimidate. It is also a message to the West. China is signaling that despite all pressures, it won't back down. Taiwan says these drills are an escalation.
Regarding this military drill, I think that China is adopting a threat and intimidation approach. They unilaterally altered the peace and stability.
So that's the second front, the military front. The third front is trade. With Trump's threats looming, China is looking beyond the United States. It is deepening ties with Russia. China's foreign minister was in Moscow this week. They're also building bridges in Asia. In fact, this week, China made a bold claim. If Trump raises tariffs, China will respond along with Japan and South Korea. That these three countries, China, Japan and South Korea, will work in coordination. They will respond together. That's what Beijing said. But South Korea has called China's statement an exaggeration, and Japan has rejected it altogether. Tokyo said no such discussion has happened. So we'll have to see where this goes. But one thing is quite clear. Xi Jinping is looking to build alliances. He wants partners who can help and counter Trump's tariffs. And for this, he has sent a message to India too. He wrote a letter to the Indian president calling for a dragon-elephant tango and and stronger ties between the two countries. And the reason for all of this is quite simple. China knows that America's tariffs will hurt. Trump has raised tariffs on China twice, and today's announcements will only make it worse. So Xi Jinping wants to shield the Chinese economy. He's preparing for all eventualities. He's projecting strength militarily. He's keeping his trade options open, and he's tightening his grip on power. We'll see if the plan works. Vantage continues after a short break. Our next story focuses on Europe, a continent shaken out of its slumber, now rushing to be seen as doing something. European leaders have gone on an overdrive, stockpiling weapons and preparing for war. But what has triggered this frenzy? Two men, Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. Let's begin with the Russian president. Putin is mobilizing troops in the thousands and dragging his heels on the peace talks. This has alarmed Europe. They fear that the war in Ukraine could expand, and they don't want to be caught napping again. So the Europeans are ramping up their defenses. That's the first reason. The second one, like we said, was Donald Trump, the president of the United States, which was supposed to be Europe's closest ally. But now the same US is engaging directly with Russia. And Europe is worried about being sidelined here. What's worse, Trump has threatened to pull out of NATO. He says American protection comes at a price, and he calls the Europeans freeloaders. He said this in his last term too. And he pushed NATO allies to spend more on defense, at least 2% of their GDP. That's the minimum requirement for all NATO members to spend on defense, 2% of their GDP, but most did not do it. And they got a talking to from Trump. Now he's back in office, and he has raised the bar to 5%. Anyone spending less than that is bad NATO. At this point, that's all of Europe. Fun fact, the US itself does not spend 5%. But that's Donald Trump for you. And his threats have worked. One of the first to react is Greece. They already spend 3% of their GDP on defense, and now they plan to invest more. Greece has allocated $28 billion for new weapons. This will be spent over a decade. It includes a missile defense shield like the Iron Dome in Israel. Greece wants to call it the Achilles shield, after their most famous war hero in Greek mythology. And what will the shield do? Protect Greece against drone and missile attacks. The Greek Prime Minister was in Israel last week. His name is Kyriakos Mitsotakis. He met Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Reports say they discussed the missile defense shield and increasing military cooperation.
It's a strategic partnership that has significant depth, as you pointed out, and many security challenges that we need to address in order to return our common region to a state of peace. But we do want to focus also on our economic cooperation, but also on our defense cooperation, which is particularly important to us in Greece.
So Greece is preparing for a future conflict, and they're not alone. The Nordic countries are not far behind. We'll start with Norway. They are restoring 2 Cold War era bunkers. These bunkers were built almost 40 years ago. They were abandoned after the Cold War, and they were turned into tourist spots. But now Norway is reactivating these bunkers for military use. One bunker will be used to park F-35 stealth fighter jets. Norway has 55 of these jets. It is not clear how many will be kept in the bunker, but it will protect the costly warplanes from drone attacks. The other facility is a naval base buried in a mountain. It's an engineering marvel. It will house some of Norway's submarines. Again, we don't know the exact number, but this is what they plan to do. Then there's Sweden, Norway's neighbor and NATO's newest member. Sweden has deployed its fighter jets to Poland. These are the Gripen fighter jets. And this is a very significant move because this is the first time that Swedish jets have deployed beyond their own territory. This is a major shift in their doctrine. Sweden stayed neutral for nearly 200 years. 200 years. Then they joined NATO in March 2024. And now their jets are in Poland, flying along the border with Ukraine. This is quite a shift. Sweden's defense minister says it's a message to Russia. Listen to this.
We share our reading when it comes to making sure that Russia can't be aggressive. We share the importance of having a strong transatlantic link and of keeping NATO strong.
So Sweden is deploying jets beyond its airspace, and that too for the first time, and Norway is restoring its bunkers. Next on our list is Finland. They are doing 2 things. First, increasing their defense spending to 3%. Trump would certainly be happy about this. And second, retreating from the International Landmines Treaty. What does that mean? Finland will stockpile landmines, anti-personnel landmines. These are meant to stop ground invasions. These landmines were banned in 1997 under the Ottawa Convention, but now Finland is bringing them back. Their Prime Minister made the announcement and he blamed Russia for this decision.
The security situation of Europe and Finland has fundamentally changed. Russia is and will remain as a threat to whole Europe. Finland aims to increase the level of our defense budget to at least 3% of GDP by 2029. We also propose that Finland starts to prepare withdrawal from Ottawa Agreement.
Finland is not the only NATO member to exit the landmine treaty. Countries like Poland, Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania also withdrew last month from the same treaty. Do you know what these nations have in common? A border with Russia. So they feel landmines would deter Russia. That is, if the fighting in Ukraine expands. And all of this makes one thing quite clear. Europe is preparing for war. But only a handful are serious. Some still fail to spend the minimum 2% on defense. Many don't have ammunition to last even a few days. Trump's threats have jolted them. But will it be enough for Europe to get its act together? Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is in Budapest. Technically, he could have been arrested the moment he landed. Hungary is a member of the International Criminal Court, and this court has a warrant out for Netanyahu. But Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban does not care. He is rolling out the red carpet for the Israeli leader. Having said that, this trip won't save Netanyahu from the fire back home. I'm talking about the Qatargate scandal. Reports say his closest aides were recruited to promote Qatar in Israel, possibly benefiting from Qatari funds. 2 of them have now been arrested. Netanyahu calls it a political witch hunt, but can he survive it? Our next report tells you.
Israel and Qatar, the two countries don't have official diplomatic ties. But behind closed doors, well, that's another story. Qatar has long played the role of middleman between Israel and Hamas, funneling cash into Gaza under the guise of humanitarian aid. The idea was simple: keep things quiet and keep things stable. Until, of course, it all went terribly wrong. Hamas attacked Israel, a war broke out in Gaza, Qatar stepped in to mediate. But reportedly, that's not all they did. Reports suggest that some of Netanyahu's closest aides might have been pocketing Qatari cash. This is to push Doha's interests in Israel. These reports first surfaced last year, and right now there's an investigation underway. While the details are still not clear, if true, this means that Israel may be publicly skeptical of Qatar, but behind the scenes, some of its most influential figures were on Doha's payroll. There are 2 big names caught in this storm: Yonatan Urik and Eli Feldstein. They were arrested by the police on Monday. Yonatan Urik has been Benjamin Netanyahu's right-hand man, especially when it comes to media strategy and shaping narratives. Urik also co-owns a media consulting firm called Perception. According to Israeli media, Perception was hired to improve Qatar's image ahead of the 2022 World Cup. Feldstein, on the other hand, had a more shadowy role. He worked unofficially as the Prime Minister's military affairs spokesman, but has been accused of allegedly leaking classified documents to journalists. Both men were reportedly getting payments through Third Circle Inc. It's a US lobbying firm that works for Qatar. So if the allegations are true, that means they were essentially Qatar's mouthpieces while still working for Netanyahu. So what does the Israeli Prime Minister have to say? He's calling this a political witch hunt.
It's all a bluff, and you're leading this bluff, and it will end up with nothing like everything else. How many cases have exploded in your face?
And while this scandal explodes, the Israeli Prime Minister is in Hungary, flouting an ICC arrest warrant on a visit to Budapest. As one of the 125 members of the International Criminal Court, Hungary is obligated to arrest him, but Prime Minister Viktor Orban has rolled out the red carpet for him. But this isn't making Qatargate go away. And what makes it bigger is the fact that it ties into one of the biggest criticisms of his leadership, Netanyahu's handling of Hamas. For years, critics have accused Netanyahu of indirectly strengthening Hamas by allowing Qatari money to flow into Gaza. The logic was that it kept the situation under control. But after the Hamas attack, many Israelis started questioning whether that policy actually backfired. Now, with this scandal, those critics have more ammunition. Was Netanyahu's inner circle pushing Qatar's interests for money? Did their influence shape policies that made Israel less safe? This is no longer just a political crisis, it's a national security scandal. And it has the Shin Bet involved. That's Israel's security agency. They conducted an internal investigation into the October 7th attacks and has blamed Netanyahu's policies, and one of those were Qatar's years-long payments to Hamas. So what happens next? For now, Netanyahu is fighting back with everything he's got. But the real question remains, is this finally the scandal that brings him down? Or, like so many times before, will he find a way to survive this storm as well?
Most games have two parts. First is your main mission, and the second is your side quests. President Donald Trump already has a lot of main missions, like his liberation tariffs and his peace pursuit in Ukraine. We've talked a lot about his main mission, so tonight we are talking about his side quest, and that is a nuclear deal with Iran. Remember, Trump himself walked out of that deal in 2018, but now he wants to sign a new one, presumably a better one. But he's not asking Iran to begin talks, he's threatening them. Let me quote what he said last week. If they don't make a deal, there will be bombing. It will be bombing the likes of which they have never seen before. So Trump is threatening to bomb Iran. And it's not just empty talk. The US has moved B-2 bomber planes to Diego Garcia. Take a look at these satellite pictures. You can see at least 6 B-2 bombers. These can carry the heaviest American bombs and nukes, weapons that can strike targets deep underground, targets like Iranian nuclear sites. And now look at the location. Diego Garcia is a joint US-UK base in the Indian Ocean. It's around 3,900 kilometers from Iran. Trump is also moving warships to this region. One aircraft carrier is already in West Asia. That's the USS Harry S. Truman. Now Trump is sending a second carrier, the USS Carl Vinson. That's a lot of air and maritime power near Iran. So clearly, Donald Trump is sending a message. Come to the talking table or prepare for the worst. And how is Iran responding? Their supreme leader gave a speech on Monday. He vowed to hit back in kind.
The enmity from the US and Israel has always been there. They threaten to attack us, which we don't think is very probable. But if they commit any mischief, they will surely receive a strong reciprocal blow.
Does that mean no talks? Well, not necessarily. Iran's president says he is ready for indirect talks, but he will not engage directly with the United States. He wants a middleman. And who will that be? Russia is keen to play that role, to mediate between Iran and the US, but Moscow is not a fan of Trump's threats. They say targeting Iran's nuclear sites would be catastrophic, not to mention counterproductive. Iran is already in a vulnerable state. Its economy is struggling. Its ally in Syria has been toppled. Its proxies in Gaza, Yemen and Lebanon have been weakened. So how do you think they would respond to a direct attack? By lashing out. A top Iranian official made that clear. He said, if you attack us, we will build a nuclear bomb.
We have said that there is a fatwa. We are working under the supervision of the IAEA and we won't move toward a nuclear weapon. But if you make a mistake regarding Iran's nuclear issue, you'll force Iran to take that path because it has to defend itself.
How close is Iran to making a bomb? They could produce weapons-grade uranium in 2 weeks. After that, it's just a matter of months. So Iran is very close to making a nuclear bomb, which is why Donald Trump is suddenly keen on a deal. Iran too is open to restarting talks, but they have certain concerns. For starters, Iran wants the US to lift sanctions. Only then will they engage in direct talks. Secondly, there is a trust deficit. Iran went through all of this with Barack Obama. When he was president, Iran signed a nuclear deal and they kept their end of the agreement. It was America that walked out under Donald Trump. So naturally, the Iranians are a bit apprehensive. They feel that Trump cannot be trusted. The question is, how do you break this deadlock? You need a trusted mediator, someone who Trump and the Iranians can rely on. Like I said, Russia is eyeing that role, but it's not clear if they have the bandwidth. After all, Moscow has its own peace talks with Ukraine. Another option is China. Beijing has offered to play a constructive role, but their sympathies clearly lie with Iran.
The implementation of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action has been disrupted by a U.S. withdrawal. The United States should show political sincerity and return to the talks as soon as possible. Sanctions, Pressure and coercion will lead to nowhere.
Arab countries are also prime candidates like the UAE or Oman. They're also well placed to mediate the talks. Whoever steps up, one thing is clear, this is a great opportunity to revive the nuclear deal. Trump recognizes the importance of such an agreement. It would unlock millions of barrels of oil, it would free up West Asian shipping lanes, and it would de-escalate regional tensions. At the same time, it would mean prosperity for Iranians because any deal will involve the lifting of sanctions, which is why Tehran is also not ruling out the talks. They simply want assurances and concessions, which is only fair after Trump's withdrawal in 2018. Let's hope both sides can put the past behind them and make some progress. Chile's President Gabriel Boric is in India. This is his first state visit to India as president. He's joined by a large contingent of ministers and business leaders. President Boric met Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi yesterday. They signed multiple agreements on critical minerals, defense and security, digital economy, and cooperation in Antarctica. President Boric also endorsed India's bid for a permanent seat in the UN Security Council. This visit is significant in many ways. Chile is an important South American partner for India. The two nations share warm ties going back 76 years. Chile has the world's largest copper and lithium reserves. These are needed in making batteries and electronics. And India is a major player in the global electronics manufacturing space. So closer relations with Chile would give India and India's manufacturing a big boost. That is why this visit is so significant. Our next report has more.
Chile's President Gabriel Boric arrived in India on the 1st of April. His plane landed in New Delhi, where he was given a ceremonial welcome. This is the Chilean president's first state visit to India, and he has brought a large contingent with him. Accompanying him are ministers and prominent business leaders from Chile. President Boric is in India till the 6th of April. After New Delhi, he went to Agra to see the Taj Mahal. He will also visit the cities of Mumbai and Bengaluru, but this visit is significant in many ways. President Boric met Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in New Delhi yesterday, and the two shared admiration for India-Chile relations. This year marks 76 years of diplomatic ties between the two countries, and Prime Minister Modi emphasized on the deep cultural ties between India and Chile.
चिले के लोगों में भारत की फिल्म्स, क्विजीन, क्लासिकल डांसेस में बढ़ती रुचि हमारे सांस्कृतिक संबंधों का जीवंत उदाहरण है। आज दोनों देशों के बीच कल्चरल एक्सचेंज प्रोग्राम पर बनी सहमति का हम स्वागत करते हैं। हमने दोनों देशों के बीच वीजा प्रक्रिया को सरल करने पर भी विचार किया। हम भारत और चिले के बीच स्टूडेंट्स एक्सचेंज बढ़ाने के लिए भी प्रयास करते रहेंगे।
The two leaders then signed several agreements. These include cooperation in sectors involving critical minerals, defense and security, digital economy, cultural exchanges, and cooperation in Antarctica, which includes scientific studies and exploration. President Boric even extended an invite to Prime Minister Modi to visit the Antarctica.
As far as Antarctica is concerned, Chile has Antarctica as one of the most important issues. It works as a gateway to the Antarctica, and we have invited Prime Minister Modi to visit Antarctica.
The Chilean president called India a vital player in geopolitics. He hailed Prime Minister Modi's leadership and said India is the only country that is speaking to both Ukraine and Russia at the same time, despite the two being at war. President Boric even endorsed India's bid for a permanent seat at the United Nations Security Council.
We have backed India in the aspiration of a permanent post at the United Nations Security Council, and also the reform of the international organizations to make them more efficient.
But one moment between the two leaders stole everyone's heart. President Boric asked Prime Minister Modi about the Indian flag and the importance of the Ashok Chakra, which is the wheel in the center of the Indian tricolor. Here's why President Boric's visit is significant for India-Chile relations. Chile is a long, narrow country along South America's western coast, and it is rich in minerals. Chile has the world's largest copper reserves, which is about 190 million metric tons. At almost 10 million metric tons, Chile also has the world's largest lithium reserves. And both these minerals are vital for making batteries and electronics. Closer relations with Chile are in India's favor, because India has emerged as a global player in manufacturing electronics. This includes mobile phones, smart televisions, and smart home appliances. Deeper engagement with Chile will only boost India's manufacturing capabilities. President Boric's visit highlights India's growing role as a responsible power in the world, and with Chile's endorsement of India's leadership, New Delhi's mission of being the voice of the global South is surely gaining more traction.
Vantage continues after a short break.
और एंडोमेंट बोर्ड का तहफ़्फ़ुज़ भी मिलेगा, क्योंकि उसके ऊपर ओवरराइडिंग क्लॉज अप्लाई नहीं होगा, लिमिटेशन का कानून उस पर अप्लाई नहीं होगा। उसके बरक्स ऑपोजिट आप देख लीजिए, मुस्लिम वक्फ को वक्फ बयूजर निकाल दिया गया। एक मुस्लिम वक्फ की जायदाद पर कब्जा होगा, लिमिटेशन लगेगा तो